Hi, this is Willow and Winnie. Well, from Pleasanton, California. Welcome to Here's Gold.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 58 of Huel's Gold. I'm Alan.
I'm Chris, and you know what?
Why don't we have cool names?
Us?
Yeah.
To blame our parents, man.
We're going to get to hear some super trippy names.
Yeah, man. I had them all written down because I thought, I need to say them all. Because this episode starts really weird.
Yes,
in
super
that,
unorthodox.
I called it a absolutely freezing opening.
Oh.
Not just a cold opening. It's like
to push you in.
Stone cold Steve Austin
It's
opening.
a polar plunge.
Yeah, because it's just instant. There's a crazy dude with a crazy story and a crazy name.
Well, and Huel picks the craziest name to start.
Yeah.
Right, and then he starts... Because I did the same thing. I was trying to type it out. I was like, okay,
yeah.
There's 6 of them. Then he rattles off a few more.
But, I mean... First things first, as you know from listening last week, we're in Death Valley again this week. Huel didn't even change his clothes. As soon as we do get to the actual open where he's walking in a field like he loves to do, same jacket, same pants. It's the same day. It's still windy.
Do you know what? I was talking to Kathleen about this last week, and she called those pants his Andrew WK pants.
I think I called her out because she wore a pair like that one time.
And she thought it was her Joe Dirt pants.
All solid. Solid people to be dressing as. But, man, Scotty's castle, I don't even want to say much. We shouldn't even say much in this little open part here. Or we can.
No, let's not say anything. Let's say
He'll
do the talking. Yeah.
Okay. Because the first part is actually the very first part of the episode, and then the theme plays that you heard, the banjo theme, which, man, I hope that wasn't the end of our, well, we played at the end of the episode, the AOR theme.
Yeah, that's always going to be with us.
With the piano and stuff, but I think we need to hit it with Huel explaining who all these crazy, what did he call them? Jackass prospectors?
No, that's the first one. That's Seldom Seen Slim.
Yeah, I'm getting it wrong. Yeah. Let's just hear Huel say it.
He billed himself as the last of the jackass prospectors, and his name was Seldom Seen Slim. Then there was Carl Mengel, born of German immigrant parents. He was known as Pegleg Mengel. Then there was Harry Hughes, who maintained he was descended from British royalty. And Walter Sorensen, who was known all over as a jovial, likable fella. And don't forget about Shorty Harris, known for telling tall tales, and Shoshone Johnny, and Indian George, and countless others. All of them, honest to goodness, real California pioneers. California characters who called Death Valley home. And we've come here to Death Valley to find out firsthand about one of those characters. In fact, he's probably the most famous and best-known character of them all. Now, his legal name was Walter E. Scott, but nobody called him that. Everybody knew him as Death Valley Scotty, and this guy was an original. In fact, he lived in a castle about 40 miles from where we're standing right now. In fact, that's where we're heading. And if you'd like to see his castle and find out more about Death Valley Scotty, as always, you're invited to join us as we all continue our search together, this time in Death Valley, for California's gold.
So, one thing, that's the first time we actually had the clip where Huel says California's gold. Usually we don't get that because we cut that out because, we do our own intro.
Right.
Either way... That was a kind of a rogues gallery of weird bros from Death Valley. What do you think of these guys?
Well, I mean, they're obviously wild. Buck wild.
I wish that, obviously it's a podcast, you can't hear it. This is something that's super aided with the pictures. I think we just came up on old Peg Leg Mengle.
No, this
This
is Harry Hughes.
Yes,
He's
okay.
a part of British royalty.
Sure he is.
Yeah, he looks like it.
Gosh. Oh. But I think Peg Leg Mengle is my favorite name.
Yeah. You know what's funny is when he said Carl Mengel,
Mm-hmm.
all I could think about was Carl Menger, he's an Austrian economist. It's the first one.
Oh, of course. Everyone knows that.
Yeah. Well, if you didn't, I think it's hard because it's hard to divorce the way these people look from their names.
Yeah.
Even though Harry Hughes, the very double H, like Huelhauser, whatever. I think I like Harry Hughes. Seldom seen Slim though is pretty wild.
I mean, he was the jackass prospector.
It's weird.
What does that
Huel
mean?
say that? Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Huel never really curses ever in the show that I remember. And it's funny because we're going to get into the topic of cursing in this episode.
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of waiting for something. I was waiting for something to happen. I mean, hearing Huel say jackass is good enough. It's as good as it's probably ever going to get.
It's pretty good.
I mean, beyond our story, which I think we get to tell it soon.
Okay.
I think, is it next week?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Man, this is a doozy. Well, I don't even want to go there yet. We'll get there next week. But really, all the Weirdos in the Desert really comes down to one guy, Walter E. Scott, or Scotty.
Too hottie. That was his desert name.
And Grandmaster Sexay, R.I.P. So, first off, I got to tell you, I actually skipped this episode when I did my whole run through a year ago or something.
Oh, cool.
Not purposely. It's just one of those ones where I was like, oh, I think I saw that one already because I was just going down the list and I was like, I think I saw that one, but I realized no, I have not seen this one. Because the fact that there's a dude hanging out at Scotty's castle who just straight up impersonates him would have been very interesting to me.
Well, and the trippy part is, I mean, I guess we get into it now. So obviously you mentioned Bill Osterman. That's his official name. Mm-hmm. And he is a Scotty Too Hottie impersonator.
Oh, man.
So he was a volunteer who looked a lot like Scotty. So he said, then I just became a ranger. Like he started getting paid for it. How does that work? How do you figure that works?
I thought you had to go to college to be a ranger.
I thought so too.
I mean, maybe he just was so inspired. He was having so much fun that he went to college and did it.
Or he already had the ranger degree, whatever you do to
forestry.
Do that. And then, forestry.
Yeah.
And then he volunteered.
I get, yeah.
And he got hired on.
Either way, what it really seems to be is this guy, Scotty, Walter E. Scott, had a look. He had kind of how Huelhauser in his later years had his look of the Hawaiian shirt with the shorts and the loafers. Scotty had a look of what they described it a couple times. It's a white shirt, a red tie that he tied way too symmetrically.
They're even.
It's
really weird.
As guys, we know we had to put ties on at least once in our life. The fat part's long, skinny part's shorter.
Usually comes down to your belt.
Yeah. No, this guy, it comes above the belly button.
And it blows in the wind. Both two pieces are just flying in the wind. So this hat.
Yeah.
Do you know the proper name for this hat?
Because
I only know that Curious George, his dad, wears it.
Yeah. I know that Pharrell wore one for a little while. That it was his kind of signature hat. No, I don't know. I mean, because they call it a Stetson, which is just a brand of hat. It's just a brand of cowboy hat, but does it have a name?
I don't know.
Oh, no.
I was asking you. If anyone knew,
I guess we could look
my
at
friends,
it.
it'd be you.
Let's look it up.
Okay.
I don't know how we're going to look up Curious George's dad's hat, but here we go.
This is amazing.
All right, so...
I learned far more than...
Yeah. Because you searched Pharrell's hat, and his,
Pharrell's big hat.
Yeah. And his is a dented derby, but I think Bill. Yeah, fake Scotty's.
His is flat.
Yeah,
all
his is
round,
more
right?
of like a Mountie hat, is what they called it.
Oh, okay. The Canadian Mountie.
Royal Mounted Police. Yeah.
Love it.
Either way, it's a crazy look. Big Boy Bill being fake Scotty.
Big boy Bill.
It's quite an interesting thing that this happens a number of other times in the show, though, because there is an episode in Yosemite where Huel is hanging out with a dude who pretends to be Walt Whitman, and he just like the dude is just in Walt Whitman like character for half the time, and then he kind of like comes out of it. And he
Is
just
it like the guy from the trains?
which guy was that?
Remember he was doing the period?
Yes.
But
Oh
he was
yeah,
acting,
yeah.
But okay, same deal.
Was it the trains? Also, it was the Pony Express.
Pony Express. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he was a Pony Express rider in a past life.
Yeah. The difference is, this is very weird because he goes in and, oh no, he just looks like him, but then he's talking as Bill Osterman, the tour guide.
Yeah.
So
if that's not weird enough that like this guy pretending to be Scotty, I don't know why he would pretend to be this dude Scotty, because honestly, this dude sounds weird.
weird.
Yeah. Like, first off, it's called Scotty's Castle. It wasn't his castle at all.
Okay. Yeah.
Like,
Okay. So it was actually financed by Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they met Scotty because he swindled them out of money sold shares in a mine that he did not own.
yeah.
And then the Johnsons, Mr. Johnson, I guess forgave him or called it even because he made him laugh so much that he replaced a therapist.
Dude, yes.
I was like, oh, dude, this is a dysfunctional family for sure.
Yeah, and Scotty was like, he did this swindling to other people too. It wasn't just
That's right,
the Johnsons.
That's right, yeah.
But I guess the Johnsons came out to Death Valley because the Chicago winters were so hard on their health. And I think the Johnsons just had this kind of like Old West lore going on in their head. And this weird Scotty dude kind of just helped things get done, it seems like, maybe.
You know, I'd said dysfunctional. They probably were functional for whatever reason.
Yeah,
They
it
balance each
probably
other out.
was
Maybe that's the better way to describe it. But
well, later on when we meet someone who actually knew them, she kind of does describe it that way.
yeah, that's true. So, did you notice when, I guess, Scotty number 2, Bill, B-O, no, we'll go B. No, we'll go with Bill. Okay.
Yeah, just Bill is fine, I guess, maybe.
Okay. When Huel was asking, he's like, wait, so he didn't even, this wasn't his castle. And then Bill ended up saying, well, if you talk to Mr. Johnson, no, he lives here, but he doesn't pay rent. And what else did he? Someone else lived there but didn't pay rent. Was it just his wife or something? I forget how it went, but no one paid rent.
Yeah, because he paid for the whole thing.
He paid for the whole thing. I know. But the way that Bill, pitched it was, if you're not paying rent, you figure who owns the place.
No.
It's like, no, dude, someone definitely financed this. I think it was Mr. Johnson.
It's not like when you lived up in Pleasanton and I stayed with you for a weekend that I owned your back unit of your house or whatever for a while.
Yeah, so
It doesn't work that way.
it was a trip. You're right. He's a weird guy.
Yeah. It is cool, though, because this really wasn't a super long time ago when this was being done. So there's film footage of them building the place, goofing off around the grounds. Everything that we're hearing about, even like this, there's still pictures, of course, but the film footage is pretty cool that we get to see what we're actually hearing about, which is not super common in the California's Gold episodes we've had so far.
Right.
So obviously when they're doing the tour, one piece kind of stuck out to me, and that was the pool. Because, you know, Billy Boy was talking about how, the state of California, you got to have filters to call it a pool. I've been in the pool game a long time. There isn't some law that determines what a pool can be or not be. I mean, there are like vector control laws in the cities so that you can't have a stagnant body of water that will potentially make mosquitoes. But it's like on the outskirts of Death Valley. I don't buy into that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was cool that he mentioned that they were big sand filters, because that is true. It was the predominant form of filtration, is still a viable filtration method to this day.
Sand,
yeah.
Okay.
These big tanks of sand that the water goes through, and then there are these this manifold at the bottom that like sucks the water through. That's it. There's like so little science to these things, because the other ones are so different. Where there's like a diatomaceous earth on these grit. It's a whole different craziness.
Okay. Well, so this pool you mentioned never got finished, though.
No, they just didn't get finished, but then it also was just called the lake. So did they put water in it?
Yeah, what did you get from that? I don't...
Because it doesn't look like a hole in the ground from the view that we see in the episode here. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know. The way I got from him is it never got finished, but he called it his lake, just like he called it his castle.
Yeah.
It didn't actually exist.
But it was cool because that did lead into what I thought was one of the cooler things, is that there was a 200 gallon per minute stream that was running down there, which you don't think Death Valley would have running water. But they're like up towards the foothills area. Like last week when we talked about the snow, it must be near there, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So homeboy Johnson was an engineer by trade, and he like generated his own electricity.
Yeah, but that's not where he made his money. Remember, because he snapped his back in half.
How did he make his money? I missed that part.
Okay, so what you're going to mention is pretty wild. Initially was an engineer, broke his back. His back was broken. It was spinal.
Snapped his spinal.
And then he got into the insurance industry, and that's where he made his money.
That's right, insurance. I heard he'll say that later. Well, I guess like engineering is always going to be a hobby if you're like it's funny. Whoa, just made a little connection here.
Okay.
Years ago when I was still like 19, 20 years old, I had to explain how a sand filter worked for a pool to an older customer of ours because he was an engineer and he just likes to know how things work. Bro, I did not really know how they worked then. Like I was only a few years into it, and I was kind of just like saying it, and he's like, I don't know about that. Are you sure? Is it this way? And I'm like, that sounds better. He had never even seen the inside of one of these things, but he knew better. So engineering brains work in a different way.
Yeah.
Than like jackass prospector pool boys when they're 20 years old. So
I just forgot what you said.
Yeah.
I was reading my notes. It's like, processed.
So the inside of the castle itself looks like what I would imagine kind of like a person who's obsessed with the West would want. Like big leather armchairs, wood everywhere, stone everywhere. It's like rustic fancy is kind of how I'd put it. But there are some major amenities, I guess you could say, like that weird evaporative waterfall thing that they got in there for cooling.
Yeah. What did Bill say? He said could you imagine what it would sound like or to hear the water trickle down those jasper rocks?
Bro, I'm sure you could just turn it on. You're the ranger. But then the music room was pretty cool. Because,
yeah.
I mean, when was that? I don't think we got a year, but the whole place, the whole back end of the house had a $40,000 automatic organ installed
in the 1920s.
Okay,
when that was installed, and there's something weird about all the instruments, right?
They're automatic.
Yeah, they all self-playing because no one could play them.
Yeah, and then fake Scotty said that if you did know how to play an instrument, you might get an extra invite because they'd want to hear you play. That's like a one in addition.
Did he invite you guys?
That's how we worded it. I don't know. Well, one of the interesting things was once it was, I guess maybe the Johnsons and Scotty had passed away, it became a bed and breakfast for a while. Did you catch that?
Yes.
Now, nowadays, there's Airbnb, kind of the same concept. You love that business model. You patronize it quite often.
I do, yeah.
You would go here, right?
Just because I use it doesn't...
You'd go
Did
here,
I go
bro.
anywhere? No, I would go there, yeah.
You have an affinity for the desert.
I do like the desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to stay in a Joshua Tree Airbnb pretty soon.
You've been talking about it for years.
Years? I guess maybe it has been years.
Yeah. At least like 2 or 3. You ready to go see all that damage that the shutdown caused?
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's funny because that's going to be part of the history of the place now for quite a long time. Is like
Right.
they'll do tours of like, oh, this is where
The doo-doo overflowed.
yeah, this is where a jackass prospector ran over a 900-year-old tree. We shouldn't make fun of this. It's kind of a bad thing, but is that really happening? You're going to go to Joshua?
Yeah. I mean, we're Palm Springs fans, so...
Yeah, I know. You've been there.
Yeah, it's true.
Do it. We'll do a live remote from there.
Live remote.
Yeah,
It sounds good.
that's what radio people say. That's the only reason I know.
Well,
Speak of the devil.
all right, we're booking it.
Anyway, there's actually like a second part to this because turns out Scotty didn't even really live in the castle at all.
Okay. This is the whole other side.
But there's a little clip to get us into it.
Okay,
Let's hear Huel set it up.
Now, the castle is magnificent, but a few miles down the road, way off the beaten track, is the place Scotty really preferred. A small, unassuming cabin where he felt at home and actually spent a lot of time. It was there I met up with Mary Litticoat, the lady who not only was responsible for running the castle from 1948 to 1970, but was also president of the board of directors of Mr. Johnson's foundation, the Gospel Foundation of California. Her years of friendship and close association with the Johnsons and with Scotty give her a unique insight and also some wonderful stories to tell.
So, yeah, Scotty didn't live in the castle. He didn't own the castle.
Presumably,
What the freak?
he didn't own the cabin either.
No.
So you think Mr. Johnson paid to have this cabin made for him to live somewhere else?
Or he was using his like swindled money that he got from all those gold mine stocks that he was selling.
Jeez.
This guy, man.
Yeah. Something Huel says in that bit when he's explaining what the cabin is and where it is he mentions that it's a few miles or so off the beaten path. Bro, Death Valley is not on the beaten path.
And even like in the little bit where they talked about because it was all like local kind of Native American dudes who were building the whole castle that they hired. And I guess the fence posts that there were like 10,000 fence posts or something. Even that road was super off the beaten path. It was like an old gravel road to get into this place.
Yeah.
Maybe it's paved now. I'd like to know if anyone has been to old Scott Boy's Castle and knows what it's like these days. Because I looked actually during the California road trip planning process this past summer. I looked to see where it was geographically, and it's like nearer the Nevada border.
Okay, it's pretty deep.
Yeah, it's deep in there. You'd have to go through a lot of the death of Death Valley.
They didn't mention how they arrived at that particular location.
Not really, no.
I'd be curious to dig into that too.
Yeah, because obviously, like, they had to own this land to do this whole deal, and I don't know. It wasn't a national park back then, so you can't.
Yeah, I don't know.
Either way, you heard it in the clip before we talked for 5 minutes that we're hanging out with, what's her name? Mary
Litticoat?
Litticoat.
Am I saying that? Yeah, I think that's right.
That's how it looks.
Yeah.
Do you get a beat on her? Like what her deal was? Like what was she doing over there?
Over here?
Well, on the show I get it, but like what was she doing hanging out with Scotty Too Hottie and the Johnsons?
I don't know why she was there. That's a good question.
They don't say. It's just she knew them and had a lot of stories to tell, which sorta.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can find something.
Okay.
This is amazing.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Did you find some info?
Well, first off, there's an oral history, an interview through USC.
2 hours of her talking about her pretty extensively, what would you call it, like a charitable life.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be how she got kind of caught up in the whirlwind of old Scotty boy.
Well, the Johnsons were supporters of
Yeah.
her and her dad, worked for the mission in Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
supporting homeless. And then when Johnson died, the properties were turned over, right?
Yeah, he
Or
donated it to their...
like a foundation.
Yeah, and then she was kind of in charge of it and eventually sold it to fund major charitable projects that she was involved with. And obviously it's just part of the national park now, so I don't know what happened beyond that, but maybe that had to do with... It was probably before it or after it became a bed and breakfast, but
Yeah. I don't know.
still, there's a lot... Mary Lidicote, she's done a lot of good.
Yeah. I mean, and she was fairly well
Aged.
aged. I was just trying to think of a nice way to say it. But
she's wealthy in wisdom.
and this was 95?
95.
And this interview takes place, the oral history interview, in 2001.
So she was still hanging true.
Yeah.
So Mary hung with Scotty, it seems like she had the stories, at least like the major overarching stories, which we get more of, which is one, dude liked donkeys,
Yeah.
dogs and donkeys.
Well, and pancakes.
Yeah, man.
How did that story go?
I mean, basically, Scotty invites Mary over to get some pancakes, and she hears like the screen door creak or something, and then in walks a donkey into the house to have pancakes because that's just part of the family too, I guess. Is that what you're getting?
Yeah. She said the four of them were at the table eating pancakes.
Gosh. So
Do you think he was instead of like a dog mom, he's like a mule dad?
totally. And there's video of him like hopping up on a mule and hanging out with his dog, and
Well, because he got Mr. Johnson, like Charles Johnson, right? Is that his name? Charles Johnson, to ride horses, right? And improve
Yeah.
his health, and that was one of the other reasons that he liked him so much.
yeah. Which doesn't seem like enough to give your castle to the dude for, but
Yeah.
hey, like if you're like super sick and someone helps you get well, even if they're kind of swindly a little bit, what are you going to do?
Everyone has that friend, you know?
Yeah. But true.
But there is something that Mary says.
There's a few things that she just says that is like, why isn't this a big part of the show? But go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So, firstly, well, I should go back to Bill,
Uh-huh.
because
It's funny, as you say that, he just walked
to
into
Bill
frame
Cruz
on the
at
chair.
perfect timing.
At 22:45, he just comes back in.
So Bill mentions that the Johnsons and Scotty Too Hottie had nothing in common,
Yeah.
except the fact that they were basically the three of them were born in 1872. That's an interesting fact.
So like this married couple and this weird swindler have nothing. The husband and wife, totally different.
Yeah, and then Mary makes an interesting contrast between the two. And that is that Johnson, Mr. Johnson, he was very quiet. He's a Quaker boy
Yeah.
and never said gosh. But Scotty was, quote, profane.
And they talk about him being profane a lot, and Huel even says like, "Oh, haha, cussing this, cussing that." And I was just waiting for Huel to like throw the S word out, or just a little something. But
That's the word he'd choose.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, shoot. But it was an interesting comparison there with the profane versus the very not. But if you think about it, Scotty, who Mary said ran away from home at age 11,
Yeah.
and then old Mr. Johnson was a Cornell grad, like Andy from The Office. But I don't know, man. There was another thing that Mary said, that Scotty hung out with Buffalo Bill for 12 years.
Okay, there's two things that Huell doesn't follow up on. One, that,
Yeah.
right, a trip. And the second thing is when Bill first mentioned, oh, yeah, Scotty basically swindled people out of money. Sold shares to a money he didn't own.
Yeah.
And then they just go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, follow-up question for sure.
Exactly. I don't know, man. This guy seemed like he had quite a life, and you got to wonder, if this dude's swindling people out of money, where does the truth lie? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
But either way, obviously, Homeboy was born in 1872. He's super not with us.
Super dead. Yeah.
But he's keeping well, according to his own self. Did you catch that? Because he's buried on the grounds right by his cabin.
What did they call it? Windy Hill, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, I'll let you finish because I have a question for you.
Well, Scotty mentioned to Mary that when he dies, he wants to be buried up there because it's all rock and he'll keep well.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I guess not a lot of moisture in the dirt, so he's gonna mummify. Is what he's wanting. Oh man!
What did it take? It took 2 days. 8 men, 2 days to dig the grave.
Dude.
It was just all rock.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
That's not digging. That's like
Excavating.
chiseling. Yeah. Man, this dude.
So he was buried there with his dog,
Yeah.
who died of heartbreak. Wait, no.
Yeah.
What
Because
did she say?
the original dog that is in the video clip earlier, like around 21 minutes, that one got bit by a rattlesnake. It's buried up there too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She mentions like, oh, he's just buried over there by the tree.
Wonder if the mules are buried.
Gotta be, right?
If he loved them that much, why
Yeah.
not?
And then his last dog, who outlived him by a year, died of a broken heart a year later, though. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Like, I've had growing up, we always had multiple dogs. And sometimes the ones that, like, an old one would die. This whole broken heart syndrome that dogs get, or cats, whatever, like, they go quick. It's not a year of lingering.
Yeah. But I noticed, to follow up with that,
Yeah.
so he referred to it as Windy Hill, which I took it as Windy. Because when they were up there,
It was windy.
apart from Huell being out of breath,
Of course.
It was windy.
Anytime he goes uphill.
it was the altitude this time.
Yeah. All 300. No, they're below sea level. It's Death Valley.
So, okay, so Windy Hill,
Yeah.
Windy. But his dog who died of heartbreak was Windy, Wendy.
Like the burgers.
Windy Burgers, yeah. Which one was it? With an I or with an E?
I don't know.
Do you care?
A little bit. Like, I do want to go out here. This does seem like a pretty interesting place. Like, I want to check Death Valley out in general because of, like, the more geological and biological reasons, like what we had last week, and this kind of weird, quirky history stuff. Like, as weird as Scotty was and has as, like, dotted as the truth may be here and there, like, this is worth a go.
I think so, yeah.
I'm not going next week, but maybe like
2 weeks.
sure. No.
Let's go in the middle of summer. That sounds fun.
Well, it'll have to be because you know how busy I am these days. But, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get everywhere. But we're not getting anywhere else this week.
And we're done.
Finito.
Finished.
Done.
It's on Frasier, right?
Yeah. I couldn't remember what they said, though. Oh, man. But we're not staying in Death Valley at all anymore.
Where are we going next week?
We're going to the absolute, without a shadow of a doubt, because they super duper figure it out. Center of California.
This is one of my favorite episodes, actually.
Totally, yeah.
The different ways that they figure it out.
It's like a mystery episode. Because he's like, where is it really? How do we figure it out? This place says it. This place says it.
Yeah.
Now, this is also the episode. You've heard us talk about Richard, who we got into contact with a year ago, who made his first appearance at Weed Patch. He was the guy who played fiddle and was singing some songs. We played some on the show. He actually got called back. They got his phone number that day because they liked how he played so well to come play a version of the theme song. And this is some history-making stuff, not only for the show, but for us personally, because we got links. We got links everywhere going on in this episode.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's a good story, too.
Oh, man. It's so much good stuff. I can't. I want to.
Email. I just remember getting the email.
I know. I want to reread it. I'm going to email Richard again tonight. Like, as soon as we're done with this, I want to email him, see if he's got any other juice. Because,
yeah, see if he wants to be on.
Yeah, I don't know where he lives. I don't know anything.
Yeah,
we'll give it a
he's in
shot.
the Bay Area these days, right?
I mean, you know, during our like kind of creep research we did on him, but that's kind of what we do with everyone on this show. Either way, come along with us next week and every week as we continue. Here's gold.